This is Jimmy Martin from the Speaking and Music Show at YouTube. Thanks for listening to the Nursery Podcast.
Hello, Mom and Dad. I thought this might be a good time to make a tape for you since, I've had 2 days of work and I thought it seemed like I had a lot to tell you about my new job, even though I don't know yet how much what it'll be like. But a lot of little things happen, and I thought if I told you about it now, then there won't be so many things like next week. I have so many new things I won't be able to remember more. It's Sunday morning.
It's cold in this neck of Ohio tonight, and the style is right for a sad winter song. I feel lost like a speck in a pile out of sight. And though I try with all might, I just don't feel that strong. As we walk through a field trekking on snowy dirt, my eyes start to hurt trying to see you smile. And we talk about fears making our story short. You are scared to get shot, your bravery goes for miles. And there's more miles to go as we walk the train tracks. I think we lost the rain back in the woods we just hiked. And the store signs can glow as you walk sidewalk cracks. I think we lost the town back trading street lamps for kites. The nursery and all of the trees cross over the dark, and some old parking lots hold my whimpering thoughts. And I'm on the next train, you and me, can't you see what this means? In the light of a torch, realize nothing is forced, nothing is forced.
Hey everybody, welcome to Nursery, a podcast from Ohio's creative voice. My name's Lee Boyle.
And I am DTown, aka Executive DTown.
Hardcore fans will note an episode, Hip Hop and Education. Came out 2015. The year now is 2016. We have a return interview from DTown. If you don't know who he is, way back Youngstown, well, not way back Youngstowners, but slightly, we'll say, cultured Youngstowners will note a hip-hop duo, the Kreek. I got to know them through a festival, Nouveau Rock Festival, and they played sometimes with the band, sometimes with the DJ. And this is DTown solo, one of the Kreek. Last time, if you listened to Hip Hop and Education, we were promoting the Northsider EP. He had just come out with a release show and this sweet EP that the Kreek totally had a hand in, but it was just like under another thing. So why don't we start off with music, and then we can get into like just life, since
okay.
because I have a couple questions for you to follow up our last interview. First, of course, what's new now? We had Northsider EP last time. What are you doing these days?
These days, I'm working on, I don't necessarily know if you want to call, it's not necessarily a web series, but I'm doing a series of freestyles called Dope 16s.
It's DTown. DK, all day. What up? Huh. It's the K-R-E-E-K, baby. It's the K-R-E-E-K, yeah. This is Dope 16s. This is Dope 16s. Yeah.
Worth going to hell for.
You know how we do it. Yes. Let me get serious real quick. Listen, I got balls in them stanzas. You rappers ain't meeting the standards. I go hard with this grammar. Snap on your click, don't got a camera. Killing you amateurs, handle your reckless, delivering maximum damages. Surround the parameters, savages ravaging y'all at some real disadvantages. When I'm in the phantom, it's not to be considered as randomness. Got a couple kinfolk who's all about smoke, and I don't mean no cannabis shit. You rappers embarrassing. One hit wonder and you vanishing. If you a boss, then I'm at a loss. I swear that we need some new management. Damn it, ain't no comparison, ain't no cesarean. You can tell to get up in this hole. Strapping kilos of coke around your throat. Only way that y'all next to blow. Don't give a fuck about how you feel. What the fuck I look like Dr. Phil? Y'all ain't the future, y'all just leaning and promethazine and popping pills. So pray for Belgium and pray for Paris and pray for Kenya and pray for Flint and pray for those who prey on me, cause God forgives, but I'm the opposite. You drinking right next to Satan, bartender called on last call. Maybe that explains why you think you got a shot in hell at these bars. Stanzas, make quadriplegic, fucking boom, stand.
I got broads in Atlanta, just to lean the family. Credit cards in the scammers, hitting the licks in the van. Legacies, family, waiting to like a panda. Going like a Montana, honey killers on the hands.
The concept behind that is once a month, I drop basically like a really, really hot verse or just a dope freestyle verse. And the reasoning behind this is because for some reason or another, I felt that there's not necessarily like me being a lyricist really isn't translating well. Like I'm writing decent songs and people are like, yo, these are really good songs. And I'm known as kind of like a performer, but I'm not finding myself in that conversation on, oh yeah, this guy's a lyricist, he can really spit, you know, he's like in my top 5 like favorite local or regional or whatever. So I'm like, I want to get into that conversation, you know, I want to at least be brought up or mentioned. So the Dope 16s is it accomplishes a couple things. One, it allows me to showcase and display my skills as a lyricist. 2, I'm doing it over, you know, some of the beats that are charting on like Billboard's top 100 rap songs for the summer or whatever. So it certainly helps with discoverability in regards to like a YouTube search engine optimization rank type situation. And 3, it just keeps me consistent. You know what I mean? I've dedicated myself to the schedule. Once a month, like clockwork, you know when to tune in and see something new, because the way people consume music, I think we might have talked about it the last time, has become, it's more rapid than it normally is. You know what I mean? You spend 2 years recording an album and then you put it out, they get the 13, 14, 15 tracks, and then they're like, wow, that was awesome. 2 hours later, so where's the new stuff? You know what I mean?
We did talk about that, didn't we? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool because you're humbling yourself to the extent of kind of demoing yourself. Not that I've seen the Dope 16 stuff is very professional and slick, but you're kind of humbling yourself in that you're putting out these short bursts to be like, hey, if you like this, gateway to my other stuff. You know, like, so it's nice that you're not like, hey man, I did Northsider EP, now it's time to just do another thing like that. It's cool that you're like, I'm putting feelers out and just like being like, here's a beat you might know if you like that beat, and then you like this rapper, maybe you'll explore more. That's the idea, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, and that's great because in Youngstown we have to do that. I mean, we're always kind of gigging, which brings me to my next question. We talked not super extensively, but enough so in detail about live booking. So you've had a couple shows since we talked about your Northsider EP release show in the Austintown area, and you and I have actually shared a bill, I believe, with the Zoo during their Kills 2 release.
Yes.
So that's been cool if listeners care that me and DTown actually played live together, which was a nice thing.
They should care. It was a very huge deal.
It was cool. Yeah, it was
huge
so much
deal.
fun. And then there was another couple, I can't remember. I think there was a band called something Young.
Still Young?
They were very talented young men. And then the Zoo, of course. And the Zoo is kind of...
No, Younger Still. I'm sorry. Younger Still.
Right.
Younger Still.
You're right. I wouldn't have got that. I'm glad you caught that. And then the Zoo is always a rotating cast. And they have Dean from Red, Wanting Blue and Khalid the front man and a lot of other people around. So that was a fun bill. And then once or twice since then, Susie's Dogs and Drafts again for you, correct? And so we talked about what you had to do in order to get venues going as a hip-hop artist / a black dude in Youngstown.
Yeah.
So what has anything changed for you as far as, because you talked, if listeners don't know, you mentioned things such as people adding on this weird little once invisible fee where they're like, oh, you guys seem rowdy, you're gonna have to pay this for this rental fee, basically security fee possibly, making it kind of hard for you to book your thing. So with the existence of Susie's, a bunch of dumb indie white people like myself becoming your buddies, have any doors open for you? You know what I'm saying?
Man, I would say between last year and this year, it was a complete 180.
Really? Okay,
Yeah.
well, that's nice to hear. I didn't know what you were going to say.
No, I mean, I've had a phenomenal experience working with Susie's, where a lot of what I was talking about would happen to me when I would approach other venues. None of that was present. They were, Susie's was very transparent. They set the appropriate expectations with me. Hey, this is what's going to happen. This is how it's going to go. This is what you can expect. This is what we're going to do. This is what we expect you to do. And I know I'm making it sound very transactional, but they're really, really, really good people to work with, very personable. Specifically, I've worked a lot with Heather Mullins, and she's a phenomenal woman. She knows her business. She works with really good people. I think she's the general manager at the. I'm not sure if it's multiple locations or just the downtown Youngstown location, but when we did the show together with the zoo, she came up to me personally and was like, I was like, oh, wait a minute, this is going to go one or two ways. You know what I mean? I just led like 150 people to saying fuck on stage. Like,
that's right. That's right.
So I'm like, I'm either going to get thrown out of here and never come back again, or she's absolutely going to love it. And fortunately for me, she loved it. She had a good time. She made sure that I was fed. She made sure that I got my drinks. And just her staff was really very personable that night. And working with her has been just a blast. Again, it's been the complete opposite of what it was last year as opposed to this year.
And, it's relatively depressing that through the avenues of me mentioning, like, white people in venues, that's how people realized you weren't this thug of a person who's going to ruin their venue.
Yeah.
And that's horrible that I even have to mention that, but I'm guessing that the hang up for a lot of people was they would get these like hip hop acts in clubs that would straight up be just rowdy. It's not really like it's not really like people that aren't like little hipster white Radiohead fans are all rowdy. It's that you're kind of set apart as, I don't know, maybe I would set you apart like the Roots are set apart from DMX, where you're like, this is more of a thinking man's hip hop.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not that those other acts are going to trash your venue. They're very likely not.
Yeah.
But you're a bit more gentle with even though you brought everyone in the club in Susie's to like be like, it's not really like, there's nothing really angry about DTown. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's aggression, there's pride, but there's not really why it's just ridiculous that people would like meet you and be like, oh this is a rowdy crowd. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Your crowd is cool. I became friends with your crowd.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the thing. Like, I think a lot of times in rap, and I'm not sure if I said this last time, but I think a lot of guys get caught up in the entertainment aspect of it, in which is kind of like WWE, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You create this character, you create this brand, and then, I've seen with a lot of guys in the past, they feel like they need to live up to this character that they've created. Whereas me, I'm like, I've seen that go several different ways, and that's not how I want to go. I'm like, D-Town is an extension of myself, You can, the things that I'm saying on the track is what I feel off the track. You know what I mean? Like,
and that's rare in hip hop, right? That's pretty rare. Well, it's rare not to exaggerate to a larger extent. Correct. Yeah.
Correct.
Well, but still, we're you and I are being nice. We're skirting the idea that even the guys who are angry, women too included, although it's a male-dominated field, hip hop. they still aren't probably going to mess up the club. That's the important thing here, is
well,
that like even the guys who are angry rappers, they're still probably not going to cause trouble in the club, and they shouldn't add that secure. You know what I mean? That's what I think. Maybe there's a few, but probably not.
I mean, but you know, to me it breaks down to this. You know, I'm looking at it objectively. I understand that, you know, you're running a business and we have to appeal to the interests. You know what I mean? Instead of charging me, you know, like $600-$700, you know, what some clubs would normally do, $600-$700 to have it on a Friday. You know what I mean? Just keep it real with me. Keep it all the way funky. Let me know that, you know, let me know what your slow night is. Okay, Sundays, Wednesdays, Tuesdays, you know what I mean? Hey, right now you only got 2 people in there. You know, I know if I come and my DJ come, bare minimum, even if I don't bring people, that's going to be 2 more people in there drinking than what you have regularly on a Tuesday. So let's make it happen. But, you know, that's just me looking at it more in a more practical sense. You know what I mean? Trying to
like audition for them in a way, right?
Yeah, I mean, you know, that's what I look at it, and I kind of have to, you know, I have to get on some type of like semi-regular performance schedule, because I want to say the last time that we've talked, I've probably done anywhere between 4 to 5 shows.
Totally. And I mean, I know live show isn't like your like bread and butter, and I'm trying to myself escape the idea of that too, because I'd like to be able to mention new releases on this podcast and get them to sell online. But I mean, I guess time and time again I ran into a guy named Brandon Noel who does poetry in Warren, Ohio, and time again he's hawking his book and stuff. I realize that for this area you do have to meet people live, shake their hand, justify yourself to them, and then they'll buy your stuff. So it's like, I wish the live thing wasn't a thing you had to worry about. That you could be like, hey, here's the Dope 16 stuff, maybe you'll buy a couple tracks off this, but people got to meet you. You know, I don't know if they're hard-headed about talent, or if there's not enough of us who care about music, but whatever reason, it's... Yeah,
I mean, you know, the belief that I subscribe to is click to click is cool. You know what I mean? You can live click to click, but nothing can replace face to face. You know what I mean? So you know, I kind of do have to get out here a little bit more. And, you know, just from me taking a look at the hip-hop scene in Youngstown in comparison to what it was 6 years ago, you know, I would go as far to say as it's in a state of emergency in Youngstown. It is pretty bad. In not saying that the artists are bad. That's not what I'm saying at all. But the culture is not the same as it was. I mean, there were so many opportunities that were present 6 years ago, you know, and I speak loosely about it, like the Ohio Hip Hop Awards has come here, you know,
that's right,
7 consecutive years. And, you know, I haven't participated in the awards since 2009. One of my close friends from Cleveland came down last year, Crazy 8 the Great, and performed in Youngstown. And I had the opportunity to speak to some of the founders. And the founders were like, yo, what's going on in Youngstown, man? Like, you know, we've got this showcase and we've got like 10 acts that signed up, but nobody from Youngstown signed up to do anything for us this year. Wow. And I'm like, you know, I attribute a lot of that to, you know, just the moves that me and my brother were making as the Kreek at that point in time. You know, that when MySpace was prevalent, we were online actively promoting, like, hey, vote for us here, vote for us here. So the awareness, not just from a fan perspective, but from an artist perspective, was higher, because we were kind of like in the area. I can't skirt around the subject. We were leading in a lot of those opportunities, and people seen that, and they also seen that they had an opportunity, so they joined in. And since I've kind of like scaled back on a lot of the things that I do and a lot of the things that I bring into the area, I've seen that no one else has kind of like picked up the torch per se, as far as a hip hop perspective. And it's like, you know, we might have little showcases here or there, but you know, when we were doing it, you know, Vex Fest was downtown, and we were one of the only few acts in Vex Fest. You know, Nouveau was popping off. We were one of the only few acts in Nouveau. And that was largely because of, you know, the series that I was putting together, the Hip Hop for Hip Hop Heads. some of the release shows that we did. I mean, there was a show that I did. What was it, in 2010? The I'm Good Summer Release Program. We had guys flying in from Dallas to watch the show at Barley's and also to perform at Barley's. Like, it was just it flourished so much 6 years ago, and then when I look at it now, it's like, what's going on?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No, I think passing the torch is a valid concern, because I think you were smart to scale back to preserve your stuff. Like, you can't just be straight up 10 years, hey everyone, vote for us, Ohio. Like, you got to take a left turn and change your art a little and do stuff. So it's like, I think you're totally right. Someone should have this, especially since there's not that many artists. Someone should have some hip hop market corner in Youngstown, which kind of begs the question: hip hop and what my band Third Class does, indie pop. Why are they not more in demand here? Is Leonard Skinner still the straight up idea here? You know, I know there's the people you and I know that are like, whether they're these hipsters or they're DJs like Dr. Goo, people like that like hardcore, just like care about music and they're at shows, play shows, etc. But I'm talking about the bulk of Northeast Ohio. Are they still just into people playing? Are they still into DJs playing chicken dance at weddings only? Are they still only cool with bars where they play Freebird? Is that still the norm? Like, are we really struggling to get these two, which I feel pretty valid genres of music out there now? Because to me, that's kind of unbelievable. Like, it should be, we should kind of be mainstream.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I agree in that sense, but there's one thing we have to keep in mind about music is, it's an art form, right?
Yeah.
And it's a consistently evolving art form. It's going to range, it's going to change, and it's going to evolve. And as it does that, so will the consumers, so will the listeners. So I try and think about it as, and I'm coming to realize a lot of this stuff, later in my career. I think about it as, you have to be a politician. You know what I mean? In the sense that, if you take a look at how a politician runs their campaign, they're here, they're there, they're shaking hands, they're kissing babies, they're taking the photos, and, it's a strong call to action. Vote for me, vote for me, vote for me. And you connect a lot easier with them if they're in your face. You know what I mean? Whether you agree with them or whether you disagree with them, if they're there, the presence is there, that they exist. So with music, I feel that it's kind of the same way. You have to get out there, you have to shake the hands, you have to, you have to be, consistently be networking, because what's happening is, as it's changing, the fan that you gained 6 years ago is now 35, and their priorities are different. So they're going to be less likely to spend money, $5-10 on music, or less likely to spend $20 to come out of a show, because they have different priorities. Now they have to work in the morning, you know what I mean? Whereas 6 years ago, their life was a little bit different. So my thing is, we just have to continuously, put ourselves out there, but continuously also introduce something fresh, introduce something new. And that doesn't necessarily mean switching your style up per se, but you may want to change the approach in how we reach people. Yeah,
it is very much a politician parallel in that we have to very slightly change our views for the people like politicians do. Yeah. Another long-running talent in Youngstown is Sam Goodwill. And the lead guy, Sam, went on a European tour this year. So in a way, he's, of course, meeting people, shaking their hands, but he's like just changing his direction just littlest bit every time. I think that's what keeps you going. Like, whereas the Zoo has taken a more of a like a special occasion approach. They're like, hey, we're doing the Rocky Horror thing, or we're gonna do a special like release. Like, they've kind of taken we're bringing the whole circus in the tent approach, where they're like, it's going to go big or go home. Yeah. And me and Sam, Third Class and Sam Goodwill, have taken we're going to split off and play these little tiny venues and be like, hey, one by one by one by one by one. And you've taken that, hey, I'm going to give you small amounts of music, but I'm going to give you a big show. Like, you kind of walked a line between those two ideas, and there's more than those options, what I'm naming. But that's a good idea that you said, good analogy with the political thing, because it totally is. It's like, it's not being a hypocrite. It's just changing slightly, cognitively reframing the way you're presenting certain things based on the audience and stuff. So I think you're right. Maybe that does make us, for this area, quote, mainstream, if there is no such thing in Northeast Ohio. But if there ever was a consistency in the mainstream, it would be us. But so listeners, I know most of you like music, but let's get off that now that we've kind of talked ourselves into a corner as far as how we execute the music careers, and let's go to, I meant to ask you this last time, just your loved ones, your friends, your buddies, your family. What kind of people are you kind of magnetized to in your life? I'm interested to know, because of your personality, who's attracted to you? Who do you draw in? Like, what kind of personality do you hang out with? You know what I mean?
Well, I think the last time we sat down, I don't think I was married at that time.
No, not yet.
Yeah,
I don't think so.
I'm coming up on a year, September 12th. So,
okay.
so that's a beautiful thing. Really, like, in my personal life, I speak to both of my parents quite often. I talk to my dad every day. Talk to my mom every other day. I make it my mission to talk to my brother at least once or twice a week. We're both pretty active on social media, so even when we do speak, end up speaking for probably about an hour and a half, so we still have a pretty good relationship there. Work consistently with my wife, who's also an author. She's working on her third novel now. To me, that woman is phenomenal, man. I mean, I could go on and on about my wife. I mean, she's working a full-time job. She's working on her third book, and she's also getting her master's in nonprofit philanthropy.
Wow, so that's awesome. I hope to have her on to talk about her authorship and her book. It sounds like an interesting thing, because other than the guy I mentioned, Brandon Noel, I haven't had too many straight up like writers, like literature, like type people on. So it'd be nice to have her on. But I mean, that's great. I mean, sounds like a good match for sure.
Yeah. And
I did meet her at a show early on. She seemed great, but it sounds like a hard worker as well. Sometimes people are writers, you're like, oh, who's this flake who's gonna, you know what I mean? Like, they're just gonna be hippy dippy, and it sounds like someone who has their feet on the ground.
Yeah, and I mean, to me, I mean, and I'm kind of like expanding on the subject matter here, but to me, it was important that I partnered with somebody like that. I made somebody like that my wife. I know that's not necessarily something that you really hear people talk about in hip hop, but through my experience as being a man and being creative, there's really like 4 different types of people that you come across when you're dating. One is a person that doesn't understand and doesn't support. Right? That's you want to get away from them. You want to stay far away from them.
Sure.
Then there's the person that doesn't support but understands. You know what I mean? They understand your creativity, but they really don't support it. They don't show up to shows, or they don't tell their friends. You know what I mean? They kind of keep it a secret, but they understand what it is that you do. Then you come across the person that supports but doesn't understand. You know what I mean? Yeah. They're there, they've got their shirt on, they absolutely love you, but so when you gonna get a real job? You know what I mean?
Oh God, yeah.
So that happens. But then the final person you meet, you get a person that supports and understands, and that's really, really hard to find. And I found it in my wife, and it happens to be that she also creates. You know what I mean? So being that I partnered up with somebody and was in a relationship with somebody that creates, we know how to talk to each other, we know how to address each other, and we know where our core values are in regards to our artistry, but at the same time, we both love each other, and we're able to come back to that. So to me, that was really important. So I don't know if anybody is like out there like actively dating, but it's like, if you are, like, watch out for those 4 type of people.
maybe that's some good advice. Maybe they can kind of gauge that when they're with somebody, because I know plenty of people who are on the Tinder game or they're doing something like that and stuff. And it's, as a married man myself, it's fun to hear their stories. My wife and I definitely like sit there like waiting for their single person stories. We're just like, yeah, give us your stories. I can't wait. You're our single friend. I love hearing your story. And yeah, maybe we take it too far because it's their life. We should take it seriously. But it's kind of like we get the popcorn. We're like, give us the dirt, man. We want like your story, your Tinder story. But yeah, man, I mean, I like that you're saying about support, of course. And I remember I had a buddy, I won't say who he was, but I was hanging out in a coffee shop with him, and he was hanging out with this girl. Talk about not knowing where you stand with somebody. Like, he didn't even know if it was a date. He was like, I'm gonna go hang out with this girl, and she wants to hang out. And he was like, I'm not really sure if it's a date or not. And check this out. This is just more comical than anything, but the guy working as a barista heard him and I talking, and we were like doing that. I don't know if you ever watched like Seinfeld or something. We were kind of doing the dumb sitcom-y, like, what makes a date a date? Like, we were just kind of talking to talk. Like, we weren't like so concerned for his. He would find out if it was a date once he got there. But we were just analyzing what I was like. How did she say it? Or, was that kind of dumb, sitcom? I was like, well, if she said you were going to hang out here, then that makes it a date. But if she said you're going to hang out here, it was that kind of talk. Just silly. And this dude heard us. Came up to us and he's like, wait, are you talking about so-and-so? We're like, yeah, you know her? And he's like, yeah. And he just seemed like he did not have the best intentions. We saw him get on his phone. This is the worst thing ever. So you can guess where this is going. Got on his phone and he was like, blah, 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 blah. Hung up the phone, came back. And he was like, yeah, it's not a date. She said it wasn't a date. And I was like, oh, you didn't just do that to him. I was like, we were just hanging out and speculating, We were speculating. It was supposed to be fun conversation.
Jeez, oh, man.
And he was like, no, she's not interested. And I was like, well, if she ever was, she sure isn't now, man. You didn't clarify anything for us either, because all you did was, who's not going to say it's not a date if someone calls him and puts him on a spot like that,
Listen, if cock blocking was a professional sport, that would be playing in the highlight reel on
That's
ESPN
what that guy
Sports.
Did.
Yeah, I mean,
that's what he did. Because who cares if it was a date? She liked the dude and wanted to hang with him.
Yeah,
could have turned into a date. Now it's not going to. Because of the phone call.
I would have asked for his manager. I would have been like,
we couldn't believe it. It was hilarious.
Oh,
but
man,
not cool. But like later we laughed about it. But that was a point where you couldn't even get to the point of gauging what you were referring to. About. Like, didn't even get to have a first hangout. I don't know if they even did it after. I don't know if they even hung out after that, to be honest with you.
Well, at least they have something in common to talk about now. Like,
years later when they're married, they're like, remember that time when we were going to go out on our quote date and that guy messed it up? They'll be married or something.
It's like she understands why he has an underlying hate for all baristas.
It's one of those dumb movies where like someone's like, no, we would never date, and then the screen flips and they're whatever. But if listeners are out there and like, as far as here in D-Town's list of like what constitutes support and what kinds of support there are, it's an interesting thing. But let me ask you this now. This is, maybe I'm not asking necessarily for personal advice, but how you define this. I've been married since 2009. I was with this same woman, Ellen, since 2003 before we got married.
Okay.
So now there are some years where I play 50 shows in the year.
Wow.
Not always. Usually we average more like 20 or 30. So at that point, I have found myself in the last 4 years, should have been the last 10, but the last 4 years with her, good friends, dudes who became friends through the band, who are definitely like loved ones / they seem to really like most of the music we make. I've been finding myself kind of hurting them away, being like, hey, don't feel like you got to come to all these shows. You know what I mean? Because like you're speaking about it as someone who plays a couple shows every few months or something. So what would, in my position, is there a nice little breaking point where you can say to the wife, it's okay. It's okay. I get that you support me. You really love me, but you don't got to come to all these. That's what I've done with like some of my loved ones.
I mean, with my wife, it's a little bit different.
Okay.
And you have to keep in mind the genre of music that I'm in is very misogynistic. You know what I mean? So it can become very easy for a person to be like, well, what's going on? Why you gotta be out till 2 a.m? I invite her to everything. I invite her to absolutely everything. It's an open invitation. You know, if you can make it, please come. Because the last thing I want to have happen is a situation where, you know, some he said, she said, or anything like that may pop off. And, you know, it's, you know, I don't want anything to be a secret. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, I would prefer, and I let her know, it's like, you know, I would prefer for you to come to all of my shindigs. Yeah. You know what I mean? If I'm meeting somebody, I would prefer for you to be right next to me. You know what I mean? Yeah. Because that's, I know she's not an insecure person. She never has been. But I don't want that. I don't want her to become that. You know what I mean? So
that's totally cool, and I admire that. But if you were 50 shows in 10 years from now, would you be saying the same thing?
Yeah, I mean, how much am I getting paid for 50 shows a year? You know, if I'm making enough to where I can quit my job and she can, you know, quit her job and things like that, yeah, it's cool. But it's still going to be the same. You know what I mean?
Don't get me wrong. I have an open invitation to my wife to all shows too, but I give her an out. Yeah, because I'm like, I know you're bored by now. You've heard these songs hundreds, thousands of times. So that's more where I'm coming from. But I respect. Yeah, I get what you're saying. You're saying more like it's about the time of night that you're out and what you're doing on stage, like as far as. But do you think you'd feel how I'm feeling because I can't quit my job and stuff. I'm not like, hey, I'm going on tour. I'll see you later, honey. I'll send you a check and I'll be back and I'll take you on tour with me. A lot of, that it's not that. So like, what do you think you'd feel if you were like, not to be pessimistic, but sick of yourself after playing the songs thousands of times, and that kind of thing.
I'm trying to gauge the question.
Yeah. And that's such a hyperthetical. Yeah. So but like
no, I mean let me repeat it back to make sure I understand. How would I feel about myself after playing the same music 50 consent
and you'd be writing new stuff, you'd be bringing a new song, it's not, I'm not saying like you're stuck somewhere or this is some desert island where you're stuck with Northsider EP only or something. I mean, would you give your friend, your wife included, but all your buddies that you're like, hey, come to my show, would you kind of be like, you don't gotta come to all of them there, I get it, like you're my friend, you support me, but you're not gonna just listen to it over and over and over and over. That's where I'm at. I don't know if that's a pessimistic view or if it's the right thing to do for your friends to be like, I get it, you supported me, you earned it, you know, it's okay,
that's a good question. I mean, I don't necessarily put it out there for my friends like, yo, you got to come to this one, know what I mean? I try to, but at the end of the day, if they're going to show up, they're going to show up. If they're not, they're not. But I always try and tweak the show just a little bit to so it's not the same exact show. Of course. I try and make my stuff a little bit more conversational, you know what I mean? Depending, if it's a large crowd, hey, yeah, large crowd. If it's a small, intimate crowd, I communicate. And, if I know some of the people in the crowd, I'll actually start to talk to them, but make it vague.
Yeah, you do a good job between songs. I love that stuff. Yeah.
I spend more time rehearsing what I'm going to do between songs than the actual song itself. So
I remember you saying that. It's fascinating, but awesome. I like it.
Yeah, but to answer the question shortly, I mean, there was a year that we did 36 shows, me and my brother, and it was just there are times where it can get frustrating, incredibly frustrating, especially in a group dynamic.
So you totally get where I'm coming from.
Yeah, it can be incredibly frustrating because it's like, man, this is the 8th time we've gone to Cleveland this year, and we're just waiting on, we know what shenanigans are going to go on when we get up there. One of the mics is going to go out. The guy is going to ask, we're going to check everything at sound check, and then something's still going to go wrong. It can become incredibly frustrating and redundant. And, at that point in time, you have to remember, you have to go back to what you started out on it for. You know what I mean? It's because for me, it's because I love to perform I like to write great music and perform for people. So whether I'm performing just for the bartenders or I'm performing for 3,000 people or 500 people or 20 people, I'm still going to give 110% regardless. It's just, that last couple of moments before you get on stage, suck it up, man. Somebody's here to see you.
Oh, of course. You're right.
Suck it up.
You're right. And okay, I think that answers my question, because I think I'm realizing that. See, you've had a year like one of our years then. So like, I remember we went on a tour 2013. One spot we stopped was Milwaukee. We have family there. We had 2 shows in Milwaukee. They came to the first night, and then they were already by the second night. Nope. And not because they didn't like us. They were just busy. They had a great time, and we were really happy to see them. And they put us up. It was amazing. But and then I remember getting frustrated, like you talked about the mics. We had a tour in 2012 where we were in Brooklyn, and it was our 7th day, and I walked in there, and the guy was like, "We have drum set up already." After our drum set was brought in, I was like, "You should have told us that." I was just like, for us, it was in the normal world of music, it was not notable, but for us, because we're 3 really nice pushover guys, I was snippy with them. I was like, "You should have told us that before you loaded the drum set in," And I was like, "Okay, here we go again, mic cutting out time." I was like, same old venue, every place you go is the same. But so those complaints exist as far as technicalities. But then speaking of my family and times when we've played lots of shows at once, my wife included, I think it's out of a place of love when I tell them they don't have to come to the shows, because for the love of the music and reaching to new people, like I'm just like, hey, I was like, I know you're going to be at shows. I know you're always going to make it there, and I love that you're there. But you can skip a couple, because I'm here to like reach out this arm even farther, and hopefully, maybe it's too optimistic, but I'm trying to change other new people's lives. And every few years you get new fans, and it's amazing. So I think it's actually, as pessimistic as it sounds, it's out of a place of love that I'm like, hey, this can sometimes become this slight grind. I'll have a great time. I suck it up a couple minutes before I go on, no matter who the crowd is. But I relieve you of your duty of like constantly supporting every 2 seconds of my silly career. What I mean?
I would say that's a beautiful thing. I haven't had a situation quite like that. Like, my parents support what it is me and my brother do.
That's good.
They're older, so they don't necessarily come out to the shows.
Right.
But I would say my cousins have never been to a show.
Okay.
Never have. At this point in time, never will. So if they come to one, I'm gonna try and figure out some type of contractual way to lock them in. Like, but it's I've never had that, like, where you're coming from a place of love. Like, hey, you don't have to come out and support me. I'm like, you never supported me, so fuck you.
You're more like on that. Yeah.
I mean,
no, that's all right. That's okay. I mean, I have an aunt and uncle in Columbiana and cousins there who wouldn't come out to our shows very often. I think they caught us once or twice.
That's cool.
And then my brother Steve actually does. It's not quite as slick as what the DTown hip hop is, but my brother Steve goes under the name Summer Camp Steve and does kind of these makeshift lo-fi rap albums. And he had a show in Columbiana, and they showed up, and it was like amazing, because we were playing a show out of town, unfortunately, but so Third Class was out of town, but Summer Camp Steve was in Generations Coffee in Columbiana, and of all the shows my aunt and uncle could come to, they came to this like rap show, my little brother, so it was like, I think they had a good time. And you know what, at the time he was still doing lots of singing and piano ballads and stuff. He was kind of had this mix going on, but it was just like, of all the shows they could come to, they actually came to a packed house in Columbiana, and one of the shows where he was probably the most interactive with everyone. It was like very wild and crazy, and so it was almost like, I find, just by coincidence, a lot of times when people that haven't shown up, who've been on the fence for a while or been too busy, when they do show up, they show up to the show that kind of makes you look good to them.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know why that happens, but in Milwaukee, the one that my family came to was like pretty packed, and the one that they didn't come to, we played to 3 people. So it was almost like I was like, I'm kind of glad they didn't come to this second one. You know, like it's on one hand you're like, oh, we could have filled a little more of the room with you, but on the other hand, I was like,
you guys came to the right
yeah,
one.
Yeah, you guys, at least we looked good to you guys.
Yeah.
That's funny how that stuff works, because I've had so many times I've convinced a coworker, I've convinced somebody, and when they do come out, it just happens to be a decent night, and so we look like we know what we're doing to them, and then like the next week we're playing to like 10 people, and I'm like, I'm really glad that they're not here. It's a funny dynamic to get your loved ones involved in your art, for sure. There's a lot of paths to go down. And then so my last question is, aside from shows, stuff like that, you're an Ohio guy. Do you have like ambition as far as wanting to travel, whether it be wanting to go on tour or not? Are there like certain countries or states that you haven't been to that you want to go to? What would those be?
I'm a huge anime and manga fan.
That's right. That's right.
Huge anime and manga fan. And I don't know if it's still a dream of my brother's, but it definitely is for me. I always wanted to go to Japan, do some open mics there, and probably do like a couple collaborations with like some J-pop and J-rap artists. Like one of the J-pop artists J-pop groups that I was really into was a group called M-Flow, but their earlier stuff, because they were more hip-hop based, they were kind of like a mix between like a Tribe Called Quest and the Fugees in a sense, and then their vocalist left them, and then they became more of a like pop group. But
okay.
I'm like, nah, man. I'm like, the dude Verbal knows English. He can rap really good. He let out an English album. It was all right, but I'm like, just from a standpoint of the production and the sound that they put out and the tones and the music that they put out, I'm like, I'm not fluent in Japanese, but I can pick up on like what it is that they're saying and the mood and the vibe that they're kicking out, and I'm like, some of the stuff is just like really good.
Okay,
so
that's awesome.
I mean, Japan is cool. As far as like traveling for music, I mean, that would be awesome. You know what I mean? I've been to New York, I've been to Atlanta to perform, Columbus, like just about every major city in Ohio. But I do have family out in LA.
Oh yeah.
That I think I'm gonna capitalize on that, because he's I don't know if you're familiar with Cyrus Harper. Cyrus Harper, he's not my blood brother, but we consider ourselves brothers. We were roommates for the better part of a year, me, him, and Mello. And at the time, he was a rapper. He went by the name Cy Hart. And he made the transition from being a rapper into being a motivational speaker. And he's had tremendous success in LA over the past 4 years as a motivational speaker. And he's just crushing it out there. And he's like, yeah, anytime y'all want to come out here, man, I got some radio interviews lined up for you. I got a show. We could put you on stage any night you want to go on. Like, I know. I'm like,
that's not something you hear often. That's great.
Yeah. So I'm like, hey, when I get my money together, man, I'm gonna come out there for a week, and we're just gonna, college radio station. He's got his degree in marketing, and I attribute a lot of the tactics that I learned in marketing from just being from working with him for the better part of a year, 2 years. He challenges me to think outside of the box when it comes to like marketing approaches and things like that.
Well, that's a cool person to have in your corner, man. That's great.
Yeah, because I thought I was doing it right, and then you just need that one person to come in and be like, so what the hell really is going on here? Like, what are you trying to do? and you give him an answer. He's like, no, I don't think you hear me. What are you trying to do?
So he just kind of cut through it all and was like, come on, man.
Yeah. He's like, if you can't tell me what it is that you're trying to do, then why are you doing it? It's like, oh, okay, I get what you're saying now. I need to retool what it is, my approach and stuff like that.
Cool, man.
But yeah, he's a really, really good guy to bounce ideas off of and things like that. And, you know, just for the simple fact that he's out there in LA and he's extended that offer to me, I'm like, yeah, you know what, I need to take advantage of that. And
that's amazing. A couple parallels just in my life with what you said. It's not anime oriented necessarily, but I found myself at a couple Comic-Cons recently because I'm not really somebody who knows stuff. I don't know pop culture that well, or comic books, or even movies that well, but for some reason, I have friends that I've interviewed on here who are into it, so I've tagged along with them, or I've gone for my own reasons. And one of the inspirations for Nursery podcast is Smodcast, and that's that like filmmaker Kevin Smith, and some of his movies I do really enjoy, but for the most part he has actually become inadvertently a motivational speaker. Okay. Like what he does now at the Comic-Cons, usually he's touring a film or he's signing a thing he did, you know, there's a project involved, but the way he talks, he self-deprecates a little and says, if I can do it, anyone can. But it actually works. Like so when you mentioned motivational speaking, like I actually really got on board with him. And it's funny because his style doesn't really concern what I do at all. I'm not really like, no one would hear like anything but maybe Nursery and say, that guy must like Kevin Smith. I'm not really a Kevin Smith dude. Mm-hmm. But for some reason, in the most unlikely places, you find these motivational like moments. Like it was really great. And so, like, he's kind of gotten me inadvertently into some geek culture type stuff. I don't mean to call anime, like, geeky. I'm not trying to, like...
it is what it is.
But, yeah. You know what I mean? And so he's gotten me into, like, some interesting ideas where I'm like, I never was, like, a Star Wars dude or a dude like that. But now, like, I find myself referencing some of the stuff he says through those avenues. And it's really great. It's, like, opened me up a little bit as far as that goes. And... the travel stuff, I mean, you got to go to LA. That's amazing. You got to do that. Like, so like, so me and my wife Ellen went to Indianapolis and saw Kevin Smith talk live, and it was really great. Like, it was like seeing a live podcast. He's just like a walking podcast. You know, he just says all the stuff you hear on the podcast and stuff like that. So if you end up over there in LA with this motivational dude who's like taking you under his wing and saying, we're going to do this and this and this, I'm sure you'll get like an experience similar to what I felt, plus more since you know the dude.
I mean, we worked together. Me and him have put together the short time we were here, we put together 3 separate tours when he was rapping. So, you know, we have a system. You know what I mean? We have a system. So when he says it, I'm like, you know, I already, you know, he's the yin, I'm the yang, etc., etc. So when we partner up, we combine to form Voltron. You know. Which ties right back into the Comic-Con.
Something I'm just dipping my toes in, but I appreciate that you know something about. We'll wrap it up now. Listeners, make sure you go on Twitter or Facebook and hashtag Dope16s. You'll find DTown's short bursts of verse, which are really great. I've watched, I think, all of them so far, and it's like super quick. And precise, and it's nice. It's a nice, like, little, he shows off a little on purpose. Like, it's like, dude, this is what he can do. As opposed to if you go and check out Northsider EP, there's those moments, but it's more spread out and storied. You know, it's more like, that's more the whole, you know, range. So, executive-dtown.com, listeners. And then for the people who are longtime Nursery people, you know what I'm going to say next. Go to thirdclass.net or bullskit.com. If you like what we do on the podcast, you might enjoy the music of Third Class or the comedy online home movies of Bullskit Productions. We're sponsored by the Orange Avocado, raw vegan, gluten-free desserts. They're going to open a juice bar soon enough in Canfield, Ohio. So find them on Facebook. And also sponsored by the Speaking of Music show. That's another podcast where they talk more about mainstream music. If you're listening to this right now and you're like, who are DTown and Third Class? And you want some, you want to jump off in a more mainstream approach where they talk about maybe Nirvana or a classic rock type stuff, go to the Speaking of Music show on YouTube. So can you say, look, Mom, we're on a podcast?
Look, Mom, we're on a podcast.
All right. Thanks for coming back, DTown. And listeners, please look forward to what he does at executive-dtown.com. Take it easy.
Thank you.
Hello, Juche music person called first name. Mrs. Last Name, it's been a long time, but Juche are still making musics. We are very happy to announce the release of our second full-length music album called Echo Title. We would love it if first name download and listen to new album. The album can be obtained digitally for Name Your Price from Bandcamp. Get it free. A limited edition LP vinyl 33 and 1/3 RPM is also available. Consider it. Peace, love, and strange sample-based music. Sincerely, Jack of Juche.